everyone, Novels Wonderland here. Thank you all for the love and support you've shown me and the channel.
Junji Ito. I shall smash Hellstar Remina. Chapter 92 to 97. Amamiya's death. 1410 words. The shop owners and their staff pushed into the hospital lobby with fire extinguishers raised, blasting jets of dry chemical agent to beat back the flames. And yet, for all that suppression, the fire showed not the slightest intention of going out. Because it was no ordinary fire. The well-meaning bystanders had no idea what they were dealing with. They could only mutter to themselves in bewilderment, "Why won't this thing die? Breathe." Using the brief chaos and cover as her window, Tomi managed to fall back further. She pressed her back against a cold lamppost, watching the white-misted hospital lobby as she worked to steady her breathing. "Amamiya-kun, what do we do now?" Mamiya Yuka came jogging over, camera still in hand, and asked Kawakami Tomi with careful caution. "Should we call the police? Can the Metropolitan Police Department even handle something like this?" "All of them." Kawakami Tomi didn't mince words. Garbage." The sheer bluntness of it, barely even a dismissal, more like a direct insult, made Mamiya Yuka's cheek twitch. "That's a bit much, don't you think? I actually have inside information. I've heard the Metropolitan Police Department has a special division for exactly this kind of incident. And I might even have a connection to that division." She pushed back with a word of protest, her expression edging toward smug, her body swaying ever so slightly with self-satisfaction. "A special division?" Kawakami Tomi shot her a sideways glance and let out a short, derisive laugh. "Also garbage. That police history compilation office, the only one with any real ability there was in Duranko. The rest of them, on Myoji, exorcists, that whole crowd, they could handle run-of-the-mill evil spirits well enough. But the moment anything conceptual was involved, they were completely useless." Kawakami Tomi had no interest in calling Kazumi Junya to file a report either. She looked up at the state of the hospital lobby, turned it over in her mind for a moment, and then decisively abandoned any thought of regrouping and charging back in. There was no countering Aizawa Yuma's curses. No matter how much backup she brought, they'd only be dead weight. And even with fire extinguishers on hand, there was no telling how many of the dead he could summon, probably no upper limit at all. According to Amamiya Rin's own words, this world ran on idealism, idealist abilities had no ceiling. And killing Aizawa Yuma himself wouldn't solve anything, it would only vent a little rage. Without destroying the apology demon, killing one Aizawa Yuma would just produce another. The goat-headed, bat-winged demon sat cross-legged above the sea of fire consuming the lobby. When Kawakami Tomi's gaze swept toward it, the corners of its mouth split all the way to its earlobes in a smile that carried equal parts mockery and provocation. Utterly useless. Kawakami Tomi could have ground her teeth to powder with rage. Unable to do anything about the apology demon, she turned her fury on the body she was currently inhabiting. She looked down at this feeble, unworthy shell. Her palms trembled faintly from the prolonged gripping and striking. Stinging pain radiated from multiple points along her arms and shoulders where the flames had licked across them. The sleeves of the hospital gown had been burned away in large, ragged holes, and the exposed skin beneath was a grotesque tableau of burns and swollen blisters. Amamiya Rin, always pushing them to train and study, and he turned out to be the weakest one of all. Almost instantaneously, the collective will reached its consensus. Without a moment's hesitation, they withdrew from Diana entirely, and handed the body back to Amamiya Rin. In the next instant, that sensation of being forcibly synchronized, of an outside will commanding the body, vanished. Amamiya Rin felt as though his consciousness had been hurled out of a calm, still lake and into a storm. A crushing, soul-breaking exhaustion and vertigo crashed over him like a monstrous wave, threatening to swallow his awareness whole. Without Kawakami Tomi's synchronization holding him up, Amamiya Rin couldn't maintain consciousness. His body, already battered from the fight, was even more depleted than before. The ringing in his ears intensified. His vision blurred, fading nearly to black. Sharp, stabbing pain lanced through his skull in waves. His legs buckled and he slid down the cold lamppost, collapsing onto the frigid pavement below. Mamiya Yuka had been muttering to herself about how dramatically Amamiya Rin's attitude kept shifting, perfectly friendly back in the hospital ward, then suddenly calling everything garbage the moment they reached the lobby. She hadn't even gotten the chance to ask about it tactfully before she watched his condition crash entirely. Amamiya-kun, are you all right? What's going on? You keep changing every few minutes. Mamiya Yuka crouched down quickly, still grumbling, and moved to help him to his feet. Amamiya Rin tried to speak, but the extreme exhaustion and total mental depletion hit like a dam bursting. They obliterated his last shred of consciousness completely. His vision went dark. Mamiya Yuka's startled cry grew impossibly distant. Then, all sensation cut out at once. Mamiya Yuka noticed immediately that something was wrong. Amamiya Rin's eyes were still open, but his pupils had lost all focus, staring blankly into the empty air ahead. His body had gone limp in a way that wasn't right, his arms hanging with a strange, unnatural looseness. Amamiya-kun. She patted his face. She brought her fingers to his nostrils. No breath. She pressed them to the side of his neck. Mamiya Yuka's head spun, the world tilting beneath her. He's dead. He was a force of nature just moments ago, cutting through 40 undead like they were nothing, and now, barely a few minutes later, he's just. At almost the exact same moment, across the city, every single one of the Tomies paused. Their vision flickered black. A dense, suffocating darkness closed in around their minds, as if trying to swallow their consciousness whole. Is Amamiya Rin dead? That feeling, could it be sudden cardiac arrest? Dozens of Kawakami Tomies were struck simultaneously by the shock to their collective awareness. But it was a one-time blow, they pushed through it quickly and confirmed what had happened. Ha 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 ha. That's hilarious. Did that idiot literally work himself to death? A death like that won't finish him off for good. Anyway, what about the apology demon? It seems like there's nothing we can do about it. Forget the apology demon for now. Our faces. Our faces are the most important thing right now. What is wrong with my face? Aren't those the same issue? The face problem was caused by the apology demon in the first place. What if we just slash the face open and let it heal itself? Great idea. You go first. After thoroughly mocking Amamiya Rin for a good while, the Tomies promptly put his sudden death out of their minds. After all, setting aside the fact that their cells were already influencing his physiology, they were still breathing, still continuously supplying oxygen to his neural network. Amamiya Rin might look dead on the surface. But he hadn't actually finished dying yet. He didn't even need to be revived. Compared to Amamiya Rin, they cared far more about their own appearances. Looking like this, if they ran into any of the imposters now, they'd be laughed to death on the spot. The Tomies treated Amamiya Rin's sudden death as a punchline. Mamiya Yuka, however, found nothing funny about it whatsoever. Her expression had frozen on her face. Her eyes were full of blank, stunned incomprehension. She simply could not process what had just happened. A man who had been completely alive and fighting like a demon just moments before, she'd looked away for 1 second, and he was dead. What on earth had just happened? Inside her head, Mamiya Yuka was screaming. Plus 40 Walnut-chan New History, Group Chat of the Dead. White heavy checkmark read up to 40 chapters in advance, all stories. White heavy checkmark access exclusive posts and updates first. Let's achieve our community goals. 100 Power Stones equals plus 1 extra chapter for everybody. P. Walnut-chan Chapter 93, Sit. 1588 words. Mamiya Yuka stood frozen for a long, long moment. Not far away, another woman was equally motionless. The woman wore a kimono. Her feet were bare. The skin around her lips was mottled with bruises, as though she had been struck repeatedly. Curtains of black hair fell across her face, half veiling her eyes, yet even through that dark veil, you could tell her eyes were unnaturally, impossibly large. Her hands were pressed together in prayer. On the back of each hand was a small, neat hole, and a red thread passed through the opening, its end tied to a tiny bell. The bell swayed without wind, filling the air with a crisp, clear ringing. The kimono woman stared at the suddenly dead Amamiya Rin, her eyes brimming with utter bewilderment. She hadn't even gotten around to cursing him yet. How had he just gone and died on his own? After a brief, blank moment of stunned incomprehension, the kimono woman vanished without a sound, without a trace. What do I do? What do I do? Mamiya Yuka snapped back to herself, and promptly fell apart. Right, Amamiya must have prepared for something like this, right? Dying with absolutely no warning like that, there's no way it was random. The thought struck her like a bolt from the blue. She yanked her backpack off her shoulders, grabbed the zipper, and tore it open, intending to search for some kind of clue. What greeted her eyes instead was stack after stack of banknotes. Mostly 10,000 yen bills, Fukuzawa Yukichi's stern face staring back at her in bundles, with a smaller number of 5,000 yen notes bearing Higuchi Ichiyo, and mixed in among them several sheets of sandpaper. Mamiya Yuka snapped the zipper shut so fast she nearly caught her fingers. She whipped her head around, scanning the area in a frantic sweep, terrified someone might have seen the small fortune crammed inside the bag. Luckily, the surrounding area was pure chaos. Everyone's attention had been swallowed by the fire, and the mayhem spilling out of the hospital lobby. A few people had glanced in the direction of the two figures huddled in the corner, but none had come close. I can't talk my way out of this. There is no talking my way out of this. Mamiya Yuka pressed both hands flat against the backpack and sank to the ground, her face a portrait of pure despair. A crime scene. A dead body. A bag stuffed with cash. Her own fingerprints all over said bag. What conclusion would anyone draw from that combination? If Mamiya Yuka herself were looking at this from the outside, her first instinct would be robbery and murder. And the primary suspect would be her. Her mind was spinning faster and faster, going absolutely nowhere. She was a rookie reporter who investigated supernatural phenomena. How had she ended up here? Then a series of violent detonations erupted from the direction of the hospital lobby. Scorching blasts of superheated air came roaring outward, shot through with gouts of flame. More than a dozen fire-wreathed figures came stumbling out of the building, barreling straight through the jets of dry chemical from the extinguishers, as if the powder didn't exist, sending the would-be firefighters scrambling backward in sheer terror. Mamiya Yuka's scalp went cold. That Aizawa Yuma, was he seriously planning to start a massacre out here in the open? Committing mass slaughter in a hospital, performing curse kills in broad daylight, in front of dozens of witnesses, at this point, somehow, it didn't even seem far-fetched. Mamiya Yuka shoved every other thought out of her head. She gritted her teeth, heaved the backpack onto her shoulders, and then hauled Amamiya Rin upright, and immediately bolted for the road. She threw her arm out, flagging down a passing taxi with all the desperation of a drowning woman grabbing a rope. It took Mamiya Yuka every last ounce of effort she possessed to get Amamiya Rin back to where she lived. It was a reasonably new apartment building, nothing extravagant but well-maintained and clean. The kind of place where management actually cared. Its only flaw, if you could call it that, was the cemetery sitting directly behind it. Not that Mamiya Yuka considered it a flaw at all. She would have been thrilled to encounter a ghost in that cemetery. Unfortunately, she seemed to lack whatever talent was required to see them. She'd been living here for nearly 2 months, and hadn't spotted a single supernatural presence. She shouldered her apartment door open with her back, dragged Amamiya Rin inside with great effort, and turned to lock it behind her. The apartment was a textbook Tokyo single-occupant layout. A narrow entryway just inside the door. A miniature kitchen to the left, the washing machine squeezed in beside it. Further in, the space opened into a combined bedroom and living room. Small but sensibly laid out. Just not particularly tidy. The desk by the window was buried under open folklorist texts, supernatural interest magazines, and interview notebooks. The walls were plastered with newspaper clippings and photographs, blurry ghost images, printed urban legend dossiers, miscellaneous paranormal research. A professional camera bag stood in the corner, and a tripod was propped carelessly against the wall beside it. She settled Amamiya Rin on the tatami mat against the wall, then dropped herself onto the floor beside him, and stared at his body with a deeply troubled expression. Mamiya Yuka slapped her own forehead. What was I even thinking? I actually brought a corpse home. But if she hadn't brought him home, she couldn't exactly have left Amamiya Rin's body lying on the side of the road, could she? What am I supposed to do? She let out a long, helpless groan. Call the police. That idea was strangled the instant it surfaced. What would she even say? This man was fighting a horde of burning undead at the hospital, and then spontaneously dropped dead. Take him back to the hospital. Even less realistic. He was dead. Bringing a corpse back there would be walking directly into a trap of her own making. Ask someone. Mamiya Yuka mulled it over, pulled out her phone, and scrolled through her contacts. Higa-san. Kurosaki-sensei. Those were the only two she could possibly turn to. Higa-san was a psychic, and rumor had it her older sister was a famous one, kept on retainer by government agencies. Kurosaki-sensei was a folklorist. Mamiya Yuka had once overheard her taking a phone call. Apparently, Kurosaki-sensei's younger brother worked in a special division of the Metropolitan Police Department. Bother the sensei, or bother Higa-san. Mamiya Yuka was still turning it over in her head when Amamiya Rin's body suddenly convulsed. It was like watching a fish react through spinal reflex alone. His upper body jolted rigid and snapped upright, launching itself clean off the tatami mat. The sudden movement scared the life out of Mamiya Yuka. She lurched backward, crashed onto the floor, and her heart nearly flew straight out of her throat. Amamiya-kun. Her breath frozen in her chest, she stared wide-eyed at the moving corpse and called out with extreme caution. Before the words had even fully left her mouth, Amamiya Rin's body went limp, like a puppet whose strings had been cut, and toppled straight back down. His spine hit the mattress with a heavy, muffled thud. Silence reclaimed the room. As if nothing had happened at all. But how could Mamiya Yuka possibly pretend she hadn't just seen that? Her heart was still hammering. She hesitated for a few seconds, then steeled herself and shuffled closer. First, she reached out and held her fingers beneath Amamiya Rin's nose. A faint warmth, the ghost of a breath, drifted across her fingertips. Her eyes went wide. She quickly pressed 2 fingers against the side of his neck. Beneath the skin, his pulse was slow and feeble, but it was there. One beat, then another. Steady, unmistakable. It should have been good news, and she knew it, and yet Mamiya Yuka still couldn't stop the same bewildered cry from ripping out of her, as when she'd confirmed he was dead. Half dead out of nowhere. Full of life out of nowhere. Dropping dead on the spot out of nowhere. Coming back to life out of nowhere. Amamiya Rin, was this guy even human? Mamiya Yuka muttered her complaints under her breath as she scooted back, and let herself collapse against the floor, breathing out a long sigh of relief. Human or not, he was still her lifesaver. As long as that held true, alive was better than dead. She'd take it. Amamiya Rin's consciousness slowly fought its way up through the black, churning chaos, and clarity returned. He opened his eyes. He was sitting in a spacious lecture hall. At the front of the room, a white-haired professor stood at the blackboard, writing out a complex series of equations in steady, deliberate strokes. The afternoon sun poured through the tall windows, scattering warm pools of light across the desks and the chalk-dusted board. Walnut-chan for more chapters. New history, group chat of the dead white heavy checkmark, unlock a 40-chapter backlog for all my series. White heavy checkmark receive exclusive content and regular updates. Help us reach these goals. 100 Power Stones equals +1 Universal Bonus Chapter P. Walnut-chan. Chapter 94, painstaking study in a dream 1472 words inferior goods. A contemptuous snicker drifted past his ear. Amamiya Rin tried to turn his head, and found the air thick as glue, clinging to every movement. Even that simple act required enormous effort. The realization came to him instantly. He had sunk into the long dream world without any preparation whatsoever. He closed his eyes, drew his entire consciousness inward, then let it unfurl from that single point of stillness outward through his body, and slowly, steadily, wrested his sense of self back from the nightmare. He turned his head and looked around. Besides himself and the professor at the front, the classroom held a dozen or so girls. They all wore identical uniforms. Their long black hair was silky and straight, cut in neat, even bangs across their foreheads. Every single face was the same, that same unearthly, bewitching beauty. All of them sitting at their desks in neat, orderly rows, playing the part of students. Except none of them acted anything like students. One had produced a compact mirror from nowhere, and was touching up her makeup. Another had her legs propped up on the desk. A third had her chin resting on one hand, staring blankly out the window with empty, unfocused eyes. And a few of the Tomies seated near Amamiya Rin were watching him with open contempt. You have our cells in you, and you still took nearly an entire hour to regain consciousness. That recovery speed is pathetic. Well, he's a man, after all. Come to think of it, no man has ever been able to handle our cells. Amamiya Rin is just half-baked. His self-healing doesn't even come close to ours. Listening to the Tomies talk, Amamiya Rin confirmed the full picture for himself. I died once, sudden cardiac arrest. And your cells brought me back. He forced his arm up and pressed his fingers against the bridge of his nose. Even here in the dream world, he could still feel the bone-crushing exhaustion weighing down his body. And yet, unlike the real world, his mind remained clear. He stayed awake. Be grateful. Without me, you'd have stayed dead. Kawakami Tomi sat in the desk beside him. She straightened her posture, lifted her chin, and announced this with all the arrogance in the world. Thank you, Amamiya Rin said, and meant it. He turned to Kawakami Tomi, and offered his sincere gratitude without hesitation. That was exactly the wrong response. His complete lack of defensiveness killed every bit of satisfaction she might have taken from the moment. Kawakami Tomi spat the words at him. Amamiya Rin declined without a moment's pause, utterly calm, utterly unbothered. A vein twitched at Kawakami Tomi's temple. She slammed both palms down on the desk and shoved herself to her feet, radiating fury. For all that aggressive energy, though, she only shot Amamiya Rin one vicious glare, then turned and walked straight out the classroom door. She wasn't the only one leaving. Very few of the Kawakami Tomies had any interest in wasting their time in a classroom. One by one they filed out, until only Amamiya Rin and the old professor NPC remained. NPC or not, even in the dream world, the professor carried a remarkable depth of intelligence. He stood at the lectern with an expression of clear displeasure, but he said nothing to stop any of them from leaving. He didn't care about students who refused to listen. As long as there was still one student paying genuine attention, that was enough. And then Amamiya Rin disappointed him too. He folded both arms on the desk, dropped his head, and fell asleep on the spot. Studying was important, yes, but recovering from the kind of exhaustion that had nearly crushed his mind and body was more important. He slept for 3 full days and nights. When he finally woke in that same classroom 3 days later, the weight of exhaustion had lifted from his mind. He stretched his arms wide, rolled his shoulders, found his footing, and then, properly, entered study mode. In the days that followed, Amamiya Rin was like a dry sponge dropped into water. Every waking moment, he absorbed knowledge. The dream world's great gift lay in exactly this. Everything the Tomies had encountered and absorbed in the waking world had taken shape here as teachers of different disciplines. Whenever Amamiya Rin wished, he could sit in any of their classrooms and extract whatever knowledge he needed. The one limitation, knowledge that Kawakami Tomi had merely been exposed to without truly understanding it, arrived in the dream world just as hollow as it had started. The professors could only teach what their source had grasped. Amamiya Rin couldn't expect dream world instructors to match the standards of the real world. Fortunately, time was the one thing he had in abundance. He estimated at least 20 years ahead of him. With that runway, supplementing through self-study from textbooks was more than sufficient. Engineering, materials science, chemical synthesis, foundational physics, electronics. His learning path was sharply focused, everything oriented around two core objectives, survival and destruction. He poured enormous hours into the laboratory and the engineering workshop, starting from raw materials and working his way up to simple explosives. First, ammonium nitrate fuel oil (ANFO). Agricultural-grade ammonium nitrate mixed with diesel. Casing from tin cans. Fuse from match heads threaded onto a cotton cord. After a dozen-odd tests, the finished product was far more powerful and portable than the crude bomb he had cobbled together in his first dream. Light it, throw it, the explosion was enough to blow a steel door apart. Next, a simple improvised shotgun. A seamless steel pipe machined into a barrel. A mixed black powder charge as propellant. A spring and firing pin assembly for the trigger cocket, release the pin, ignite the charge, drive the shot. He worked through it in the engineering workshop with textbooks open beside him, cross-referencing diagrams against physical components, feeling his way forward piece by piece until he had a working prototype. After that, round after round of testing, varying the chemical mixture ratios, running live tests in open terrain, logging chamber pressure, muzzle velocity, and stability for every iteration. Blowouts were par for the course. Flying metal fragments shredded him more than once, leaving him covered in wounds. The only mercy was that this was the dream world. In reality, he would have killed himself a dozen times over. Through a combination of growing control over the dream environment and steadily sharpening technique, Amamiya Rin endured it all, and eventually produced a working firearm, and the optimal ammunition to feed it. And through all of this, he never set aside his practice of hypnosis or kendo. In a private room, standing before a full-length floor mirror, he conducted deep sessions of self-hypnosis. He needed finer, more precise command over his own subconscious, to resist the memory distortion that the long dream induced, to defend against the mental corrosion of supernatural curses, and to explore how hypnotic suggestion could be applied more effectively to others. The results, unfortunately, were limited. Without a skilled practitioner to guide him, working from books alone could only take him so far. It seems like when I wake up, I'll need to track down that legendary master hypnotist. A character from one of Junji Ito's manga. Someone whose hypnosis was potent enough to affect ghosts, whose subjects couldn't escape even through death. A technique like that had crossed the line from craft into something closer to fantasy realm sorcery. His kendo practice hall was grander in scale. Day after day, Amamiya Rin drilled his sword work and engaged in live sparring. Kendo, though, was not the priority, it was maintenance. A way to prevent forgetting, to keep from regressing. His swordsmanship had hit a ceiling. Solo practice behind closed doors was no path forward. That was one reason. The more pressing one, the inherent limitations of the sword had been laid bare by the battle at the hospital. He had come to understand, truly understand, that knowledge was the real source of power. If he'd had explosives and firearms during that fight, dealing with Aizawa Yuma would have been a far simpler matter. This stretch of dream world time had one clear purpose: leverage university-level knowledge to master the construction of his own weapons. Read more. Walnut-chan New History, Re. 0. Wrath Route Yandere Emilia watches the projection White Heavy Checkmark access up to 40 advanced chapters of all stories. White Heavy Checkmark receive exclusive content and updates. Help us hit our community goals. 100 Power Stones equals +1 bonus chapter for everyone. P. Walnut-chan Chapter 95, Tomi's Request 1448 words, long-range, firearms. Mid-range explosives. Mid to close range, spears. close-range blades, and barehanded combat for when everything else fails. On top of all that, different environments and different enemies demand entirely different countermeasures. Amamiya Rin exhaled slowly. A world without a unified cultivation system is a genuine pain in the neck. His hands didn't stop moving as he said it. He was in the middle of a precise modification, swapping out the mechanical firing pin of the shotgun for a lithium battery and a miniature electromagnetic coil. What does that even mean? Kawakami Tomi leaned against the door frame with her arms folded, slender fingers idly twisting a lock of jet black hair. All this tinkering you're doing, can any of it actually kill that apology demon? You're aiming too high. That thing is a demon. Amamiya Rin didn't look up. With practiced efficiency, he finished assembling the modified shotgun. He raised the weapon, aimed it at the blackboard at the far end of the room, and squeezed the trigger. The electromagnetic coil discharged in an instant. Steel shot screamed through the air with a sharp crack, blasting a dense constellation of craters across the blackboard's surface, shards of chalk and wood erupting outward in all directions. Incorporating the electromagnetic system has improved firing speed considerably. He turned the weapon over in his hands, murmuring to himself. A curious world, this. Physical laws that can't be perceived or touched subjectively, and yet they operate exactly the same as in the real world. If he could successfully replicate this weapon in reality, assassinating a prime minister wouldn't require a second shot. I don't want to hear any of this, Tomi snapped, stomping her heel against the floor with clear impatience. You claim to know so much, so start thinking of something useful. Give me a plan. No matter how much pressure you put on me, the fact remains, this world contains no benevolent, controllable, sufficiently powerful supernatural force. Amamiya Rin shrugged. There was, technically, one option, the divine artifact from Siren, a relic capable of releasing supernatural flame by consuming the wielder's life force. It would suit Kawakami Tomi's constitution perfectly. But Hanada village was far too dangerous. Daitsushi, as a higher-dimensional being, occupied a tier that likely matched, or exceeded, the apology demons. Anyone who went in had almost no chance of coming back out. Rather than pressuring me, wouldn't you be better off developing yourself? Your advantages far outstrip mine, a complete immortal body, every skill and technique you've borrowed from me at no cost, physical health that most people can only dream of. Becoming stronger should be considerably easier for you than it is for me. Why on earth would I do something so inelegant? Kawakami Tomi rolled her eyes with theatrical perfection. Stop posturing. I know you better than that. Amamiya Rin shook his head, a quiet laugh escaping him. You pursue your goals by whatever means necessary. Your willpower is no less than mine, in fact, it's more frightening, because you have no floor. If killing the apology demon required it, you'd do absolutely anything. Torturing yourself. Torturing others. It makes no difference to you. Far from angering her, Amamiya Rin's dissection of her character made the corners of Tomi's red lips curl into a slow, dangerous arc. Oh my well. Seeing right through me, are you, Rin-kun? She crossed the room toward him with that languid, bewitching gait, tilting her head slightly. Those uncanny eyes fixed on him with the bright, mischievous interest of someone planning something wicked. In front of you, I feel like I'm not wearing any clothes. There's nothing I can hide. It's more than clothes, Amamiya Rin said plainly. To my eyes, you're like a skeleton, no skin, no flesh. Just bone. The words landed like a blunt instrument. Kawakami Tomi faltered for just a fraction of a second. White skeleton visualization. What kind of insufferable technique is this? The irritation flared inside her. Her expression, however, didn't change. But she continued, her voice resuming its smooth cadence, you can't deny it, can you? We understand each other better than anyone in this world. What we share is more intimate than any married couple alive. We are bound by fate, partners destined to spend our lives entwined. There is no version of this where we part ways. She extended her right hand. Fingertips, ice-cold, traced a light line across Amamiya Rin's cheek, leaving behind a trail of subtle, unsettling sensation. So we could simply get a little closer, couldn't we, Rin? I'm perfectly willing, you know. My body and soul, entirely yours. In exchange, give me your heart in return. You can only say something that foolish here in the dream world, where the Tomi network is temporarily offline, can't you? Amamiya Rin gave her a long, flat look. He used the barrel of the shotgun to push her arm aside, then turned and walked back toward the workbench. His back was to her when he spoke, his tone perfectly offhand. Your body and soul. You want to trade something that hollow for my mind. A short pause. Not even a fool would agree to a deal that bad. He didn't spare her the rest of it. Your inner world is nothing but a bottomless pit of vanity. Your body is the cheapest commodity in existence. To speak plainly, your body and soul are no different from the garbage you claim to despise. You have some nerve saying that to my face. Tomi's smile cracked. A vein stood out at her temple. The sweetness of her voice spiked into something sharp, and her chest rose and fell with visible, suppressed fury. Amamiya Rin. Before the tirade could fully erupt, Amamiya Rin raised a hand and pressed it lightly over her mouth. All right, all right. We know each other inside and out. Let's not waste time on this. It only squanders something precious. Tomi wrenched her head away sharply, throwing off his touch, and let out a contemptuous snort through her nose. But then, as if a thought had come to her, the corners of her mouth curved upward again slightly. We're already inseparable, Amamiya Rin. Whether you find me repulsive or hateful, your life is tied to mine. That's simply the truth of it. I've never denied that, Amamiya Rin said. He lowered his hand, his voice unhurried. Unlike Kawakami Tomi, his expression had not shifted once throughout the entire exchange. You're the one who keeps making an issue of it. The words had barely left him before the faint, tentative opening that had appeared in Tomi's expression closed completely. That beautiful face returned to its usual portrait of displeasure and wounded pride. But she held it in. She didn't lash out. Instead, she actively drew on the dhyana state she had learned from Amamiya Rin, applying even a rudimentary level of meditation to dispel the negative emotion that had risen to the surface. Her arms folded across her chest, lifting slightly, as she straightened with imperious self-possession and made her demand, give me something actionable. I need your brain right now. Tell me how to kill the apology demon, and how to undo whatever curse has been put on my face. If that's beyond you, at the very least give me a path, a method for getting strong enough, fast enough to destroy that thing. Quite a list. Killing the apology demon is off the table for now. As for the curse on your face, Amamiya Rin paused. Carve your face open and let it regenerate. Or try that alchemy formula, strip the skin entirely and grow a fresh layer over everything. Abruptly, his hands stilled. A contemplative expression settled over his features. Change a face, replace a layer of skin. Something had come to him. A genuinely bizarre inspiration, grotesque, even. But strange as it was, it might just be the thing that saved humanity. At least once. Keep going. What else? Seeing him drift off into thought, Tomi clicked her tongue with impatience. What else? The path forward that actually suits your kind. Amamiya Rin snapped back to the present and turned to face her. Do you remember Teacher Takagi's research? Wentmore. Walnut-chan New History, Re. 0. Rathrout Yandere Emilia watches the projection White Heavy Checkmark read 40 chapters ahead on every series. White Heavy Checkmark unlock supporter-only perks and news. Let's reach these milestones together. 100 Power Stones equals plus 1 free chapter for all readers. Walnut-chan on P. Chapter 96, Ultimate Creature Tomi. 1401 words Teacher Takagi's research. Kawakami Tomi tilted her head to one side, let out a contemptuous snicker, and spoke with pointed disdain. Don't tell me you actually think his research has any real value. He's just a high school teacher. Everything he documented was blindingly obvious. True, but those blindingly obvious phenomena still contained useful data. Controlling, altering, and dividing one's own flesh, if you could do that consciously and at will, it would be an extraordinarily powerful ability. Don't make it sound so simple. Kawakami Tomi's brow furrowed with displeasure. She hooked a chair toward herself with her foot, sank into it with languid ease, and crossed her legs, the toe of her high heel tapping lightly at the air. That idiot never actually figured anything out, but you've seen the phenomena he catalogued, haven't you? When my mental state is unstable, my body fragments. That's all it is. You're reading way too much into it. I'm not reading too much into it. You're selling yourself short. Amamiya Rin leaned forward slightly, his gaze fixed on Tomi's eyes. Genuinely, Tomi, you're far stronger than you think you are. She had always been the passive victim, cut apart, dismembered, and then reborn. But chapter after chapter, as Junji Ito drew her story, Kawakami Tomi's abilities had been steadily climbing in the details, accumulating power that she herself had never stopped to measure. In the little finger, Tomi could control the speed of her body's recovery. In the old ugly, Tomi could dissolve her body down to individual cells, and slip out through the cracks in stone. In control, Tomi could parasitize a host's body entirely, commanding their every movement, and, like a vampire, compel her host to bite others and drain their life force. Kawakami Tomi possessed cellular-level mastery over her own body. Even if she couldn't access it now, the potential was already inside her. So what you're saying is, my ceiling is manipulating my own cells to reshape my flesh. What's the use in that? Kawakami Tomi listened to Amamiya Rin finish, then tilted her head, and turned the question back on him. In the simplest possible terms, you could become the ultimate being. Humans have limits. You don't. A certain man, a man who had stopped thinking, surfaced unbidden from somewhere in the back of Amamiya Rin's mind. Who even understands what that means? All I want to know is whether we can kill that apology demon. Kawakami Tomi stared at Amamiya Rin, who had inexplicably started getting worked up, and couldn't help rolling her eyes at him. I don't know. Amamiya Rin caught himself and answered plainly. The ultimate being was still a biological entity. Their opponent, after all, was a demon capable of wiping out humanity in a single stroke. But if the body were trained to its absolute limit, and the ultimate sword technique mastered, and the divine blade from Siren obtained, heart, technique, strength, weapon, all four at their peak might be enough to fight it. Ideally paired with a soul blade to constantly replenish vitality and shorten regeneration time. And if possible, acquiring the ability to fly and project energy from that supernatural transfer student. Amamiya Rin found himself quietly grateful. Thank goodness Junji Ito had once drawn a short manga adaptation of Siren. Short-form manga didn't call for combat tools, but horror games provided their protagonists with exactly that kind of countermeasure equipment. So there is a way. Kawakami Tomi's eyes lit up in an instant. Like a shark that had caught the scent of blood in the water, she snapped to her feet, and launched herself at Amamiya Rin. Jet black hair cascaded down, sweeping across his cheek with a faint, ticklish softness. Kawakami Tomi leaned her head slightly down, her breath warm and fragrant as orchid, a gentle heat drifting past the curve of his ear, and her voice curled with delighted mischief. Hee, I knew it. You're all complaints on the outside, but you come through in the end, don't you? Weren't you making that whole troubled face just a moment ago? I'm not a computer. I can't spit out an answer the second you ask a question. The impact of her throwing herself at him sent Amamiya Rin stumbling forward. He braced both hands against the workbench to steady himself and raised one arm with mild exasperation to press back against her shoulder. I need time to think, to connect the clues I know and work my way toward a conclusion. Tomi's arms coiled around his neck like water serpents. Her body pressed fully against his back, her chin resting on his shoulder as she tilted her face to look at him sidelong, smiling warmly. Sure, let's say that's how it works. So what exactly do we do? Pressure training, I don't need to tell you that part, do I? Back then, after the very first round of pressure training, the Tomy network had already been flooded with thoughts of beating Amamiya Rin to his knees. The Tomys hadn't been joking. It wasn't just Tomy no. 25, who had experienced it once, several others had gone ahead and tried the pressure training for themselves, and every single one of them had pushed through the full regimen. Isn't muscular women your thing? Kawakami Tomy had caught the unspoken implication in his tone, and she grinned at him with languid amusement. One of them. And that was in the past. Amamiya Rin corrected her without a flicker of embarrassment. The real foundation of mastering the body should be dhyana, the gate of contemplation, self-hypnosis, and most fundamentally, medicine. The last one goes without saying. You can't reshape your flesh into whatever form you need without first understanding the human body through medicine. As for the former, it's straightforward, given everything I understand about Tomy. Every single one of your cells almost certainly has its own independent will. It's just suppressed by your subconscious while it remains inside your body. It only breaks free when it flows outside, or when your mental state becomes unstable. What you need to do is look inward through the gate of contemplation, and then hypnotize your own cells through self-suggestion, coaxing them to shift and change according to your will. Amamiya Rin paused mid-sentence, a thought catching him off guard. Wasn't this just another expression of mind over matter? So the more abnormal the existence, the more easily they could bend reality through will alone. The gate of contemplation. Absolutely not. The smile vanished from Kawakami Tomy's face. Her brow knitted tight, her expression flooded with open revulsion. Fine, we skip that. Hypnosis alone works too, it'll just be slower. Amamiya Rin accommodated her without argument. He understood perfectly well, Kawakami Tomy would never willingly use the gate of contemplation. Even the last time had been an impulsive act, and on top of that, she'd turned it on him. Hypnosis. That actually sounds decent. Time is the one thing we're never short on. Kawakami Tomy's eyes flickered with thought. She unwound herself from Amamiya Rin's neck and straightened up. The following day. The medical school building. Through long stairwells and winding corridors, brushing past the NPC residents of the dream world, Amamiya Rin pushed open a wooden classroom door, and his footsteps slowed. The lecture hall could seat 100. Right now, it was nearly full. Not just NPC students, the 50-odd Kawakami Tomys were there too, wearing all manner of different fashions, every one of those identically beautiful faces wearing the exact same expression of irritated impatience. As if they'd all been happily window shopping just a moment ago, and had been forcibly dragged to school without warning. Quite the turnout. Amamiya Rin clicked his tongue in genuine surprise. Even on the very first day he had entered the dream world, he had never seen this many Tomys gathered in one place at once. Read more, Walnut-chan New History, Re. 0, Rathrout Yandra Emilia watches the projection. White heavy checkmark access up to 40 advanced chapters of all stories. White heavy checkmark receive exclusive content and updates. Help us hit our community goals. 100 Power Stones equals +1 bonus chapter for everyone. P. Walnut-chan Chapter 97, Demon's Contract. 1489 words. It would hardly be fair for me to suffer alone while the impostors reap all the benefits, would it? One of the Kawakami Tomys rested both arms on the desk, propping her chin on the backs of her hands, smiling with sweet satisfaction as she spoke. The moment she opened her mouth, Amamiya Rin recognized her. She was the same Tomy he'd spoken with the day before. Doing something pointlessly spiteful with no gain for ourselves, now that really is our style. The Tomy seated beside her let out a cold snicker. Kawakami Tomy showed not the slightest trace of shame. If anything, her smugness deepened. She had gone to considerable effort to track down every last imposter and bring them together. 50-odd Tomys, scattered across Tokyo the moment they entered the dream world, under normal circumstances, rounding them all up would have been nearly impossible. But a sufficiently powerful act of will could bend the dream world itself. All Kawakami Tomi had to do was locate the ones who knew where the others were, then pool their consciousness, and under the pull of that shared awareness, they naturally drifted toward the rest. More than half of those Tomis had, not long before, put themselves to sleep through self-suggestion, intending to snooze straight through until the dream ended. Kawakami Tomi had woken every single one of them. Amamiya Rin stepped into the classroom, his gaze sweeping the room, and then it stopped dead. One figure stood out instantly amid the sea of identical faces. A small, slight girl. The demon's daughter. He didn't know what name she'd gone by before. But now she could probably be called Aizawa Tomi. We meet again, though I suppose this is technically our first proper meeting, isn't it? Amamiya Rin took the seat beside Aizawa Tomi, and extended his right hand toward her with a friendly smile. Yeah, we meet again. How about you offer me your brain matter as a gift to celebrate? Aizawa Tomi fixed him with a hollow, unsettling stare, a strange smile crawling across her face. That's a pretty good joke. Amamiya Rin laughed it off without missing a beat, withdrawing his hand naturally, then tilted his head with genuine curiosity. You seem to be in good spirits. Feel like talking. Tell me, who do you think you are right now? Are you an idiot? I'm obviously myself. The one and only real Kawakami Tomi. Aizawa Tomi stated this as though it were the most self-evident truth in the world. That's correct. Amamiya Rin looked at her with quiet pity. Her body hadn't fully converted yet, but it was obvious. Aizawa Tomi's consciousness had been completely subsumed by Kawakami Tomi's. Her nervous system, her very sense of self, was actively rebuilding itself around the identity of Kawakami Tomi. The sacred Kala could never have achieved this. All it could do was link minds through a shared neural connection. But Aizawa Tomi had been absorbed after the sacred Kala became the Tomi network, and that made all the difference. She still retained the old appetite for brain matter. But her self-perception had been rewritten, completely and utterly, into Kawakami Tomi. Tomi, how much do you know about the demon? Before Aizawa Tomi could take offense at Amamiya Rin's expression, he pivoted the subject. I'm the child my mother had with a demon. That demon is some idiot who loves to apologize. My worthless brother dug up some ritual from who knows where, summoned the thing, made a wish, and got a power out of it. Aizawa Tomi shrugged, speaking with casual indifference as her fingernail began dragging across the surface of the desk, producing a sharp, grating screech. Summoning a demon, making a wish, receiving a power, and the price. Amamiya Rin reached out and pressed his hand over her small fidgeting one, silencing the awful sound. How would I know something like that? I don't even know where the edge of the universe is. Aizawa Tomi pulled her hand out from under his with an impatient roll of her eyes. What about the ritual itself? Surely you know what that involved. Amamiya Rin pressed on. I know it, yeah, but why are you asking? Are you thinking of making a contract with my biological father yourself? Aizawa Tomi's eyes turned dangerous. She bared her teeth, her demeanor shifting into something openly hostile. Is that it? You want to get your hands on that disfigurement curse to use against me? Before she'd even finished speaking, 50-odd pairs of eyes swiveled in unison onto Amamiya Rin. Why are you all looking at me? He turned his head. From every direction, more than 50 Tomis were staring at him with expressions that promised nothing good. Their eyes said it plainly enough. If Amamiya Rin so much as admitted he'd considered it, they would carve him into mincemeat on the spot. Is that really the kind of person you think I am? Your personal code definitely doesn't include restricting yourself to ethical methods when dealing with enemies. One of the Tomis stated it bluntly. Do you really think you rank higher on my list of priorities than a world-ending demon who kills for the sheer joy of it? Aren't you all a little too high on yourselves? Facing the wall of suspicious stares without so much as flinching, Amamiya Rin shot the question right back at them. The Tomis collectively faltered. Then, one by one, they turned away with affected nonchalance, pretending they hadn't said anything at all. Amamiya Rin turned back to Aizawa Tomi. His expression was serious now, earnest, even. He laid out his thinking plainly. The apology demon must operate according to some kind of rule or law. Otherwise, a ritual for summoning it and granting wishes wouldn't exist. Even if we can't exploit that rule set directly, if we ever want to kill it, we need to know how to summon it and pull it into the same dimensional plane as us. Naturally, that method is useless right now. Even if we summoned the apology demon today, we couldn't beat it. But we need to record the method in advance, before the span of a long dream causes you to forget the ritual entirely. Once she had Amamiya Rin's answer, Aizawa Tomi didn't waste words. She didn't spare a single thought for the fact that the target of this plan was her own father. She pulled out a notebook immediately and wrote down the specifics of the summoning ritual. The process was straightforward: kill a small animal, at a specific time and place, suspend the carcass and arrange it in a precise sequence, light candles, recite a particular incantation. The apology demon would appear. Amamiya Rin read through it once, then copied every detail into his own notebook. He planned to review it every single day, because the moment he left the dream world, there was every chance he'd forget. Time flew. Years passed in the blink of an eye. Through that long stretch, Amamiya Rin continued his studies, while the Tomis kept each other in check, and none of them slackened. They studied medicine. They trained in hypnosis. Slowly, gradually, the Tomis turned what had once been a passive reflex, their bodies fragmenting whenever their mental state destabilized, into something they could consciously control. At first, they could only split a second head from their own. Not particularly useful in a fight. Or so it seemed, but in the dream world, where the Tomi network didn't exist, having an extra head that was willing to cooperate wasn't entirely without merit. In the real world, though, with 50-odd consciousnesses already working in concert, one extra head wasn't going to tip any scales. But after long and grueling training, the point of division was no longer limited to starting from the head. On the school's practice field, Kawakami Tomi drew a long, slow breath. She visualized the muscle fibers near her shoulder blade, their separation, their proliferation, their reconstruction, all driven by the force of her will alone. Within seconds, her right shoulder began to swell. The muscle rippled and writhed beneath her skin, and then a pale, slender arm tore through her clothing from below the shoulder blade and extended outward. The newborn arm spread its 5 fingers wide, then clenched them into a fist. The wrist rotated. It even traced a few simple gestures in the air, confirming with absolute certainty, fully under control. Walnut-chan, winky face. New history, Re-0, Wrathrout Yandere Emilia watches the projection. White heavy checkmark jump 40 chapters ahead of the public release. White heavy checkmark get access to special perks and news. Help smash these goals. 100 power stones equals +1 bonus chapter for everyone. Walnut-chan, don't forget to like and subscribe to Novels Wonderland.